Hi, I'm MUNPR foreign correspondent Bryce Latrell on the ground in Padua, Italy. This podcast was recorded at
6:09 p.m. on Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025.
The news may have changed by the time you hear this.
Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance, your host and vice president for the next approximately 12 hours. This is the final episode in a four-part series on the 2025 UTK MUN elections, and in today's episode we're going to be analyzing the results from our fourth and last round of polling. You'll notice that in the playlist there are actually a total of 6 episodes. In addition to the 4 regularly scheduled episodes, episode 5 features interviews with every candidate for every office, and I would highly encourage you to listen to it. It is substantially longer than the other episodes, but I figured it would be easier for people to listen to as they went about their day than if I broke them up into 5 different episodes. You'll also notice that there is a significantly shorter episode 6, which I will talk more about at the end of this episode. Another disclaimer before we start: 3 of our candidates from last week have now dropped out of the election, 1 before the poll was sent out and 2 afterwards. So to everyone planning to vote Ella Esser for membership chair, Jenny Lynn for communications director, or Lauren Turner for anything, I regret to inform you that you will have to pick another candidate to back. If we were to make an analogy to a real U.S. election here, we're looking at late October. So most people have made up their minds as to who they support, but there is still the possibility of an October surprise and a major upset. We're going to start from the bottom of the ballot and work our way up like we will on election night, but we'll also take a wider scope view of the candidate's support over time. First, we'll take a look at the polling for Ethan Lindsay's confirmation as Secretary General of Vol 111. Any guesses as to how Ethan's polling was this week? If you guessed he got 100% support again, you win. Nobody should be surprised by this outcome. Once again, it is not an open election. The only outcomes are either Ethan is confirmed or JR has to choose someone else for us to vote on. He received 94.1% support for his confirmation in the first poll and has remained at 100% every week since. Next up, we'll jump to the communications director poll. Once again, Jenny Lynn and Lauren Turner have dropped out of the race, so there are now only 2 candidates, Reagan Murphy and Mary Helen Scow. Last week, Lynn had a large plurality of the vote at 42.9%, and her exit from the race has shaken things up. Scow has been in the race since the beginning, receiving 17.6% support in the first poll and more than doubling her numbers to 50% support in the second poll. Last week, she fell to 28.6% support after nominations began, but she has more than recovered, shooting up to 75% support this week. Murphy has also been in the race from the beginning, always polling in the top 3. She tied with Scow at 17.6% support in week 1, fell to 6.3% in week 2, but rallied to 21.4% last week. This week, she continued to improve her numbers to 25% support. As always, we'll save the demographic information for the end, so if you want more detailed information on the candidate's support basis, be sure to stick around. Before we look at membership chair polls, just a reminder that Ella Esser and Lauren Turner have dropped out, so it is now less of a race and more of a coronation for Avery Sinclair. The suspension of the Esser and Turner campaigns and Sinclair's efforts in the closing days of the race have shaken it up greatly, leading to an almost complete reversal of last week's numbers. Sinclair received 11.8% support in our first poll, and week 2 brought bad news as she fell to 0%. The beginning of nominations in week 3 proved a boon to Sinclair, however, as she rose to 21.4% support. This most recent poll witnessed what some are calling the Sinclair miracle, as she climbed to 58.3% support, and the recent exit of Turner from the race has virtually guaranteed Sinclair's election, as she is the sole remaining candidate. Turner himself also endorsed Sinclair, saying, quote, "I officially concede and fully endorse Avery Sinclair for any and all roles in my stead. Just finished listening to I Shot the Sheriff by Eric Clapton. It was quite good." Despite the fact that they dropped out of the election, I have still included their interview in the interview episode as it was too funny to leave out. Moving on to the Veep stakes, membership chair Nathaniel Barnett has retained his spot at the top of the polls, though his opponents have managed to cut into his lead a bit. Barnett has been the most popular candidate since day 1, but he has managed to win over nearly all of his opponent's supporters to his side over time. In week 1, he polled at 35.3% support, achieved a 56.3% majority in week 2, and once nominations began last week, he shot ahead to an 85.7% support supermajority. This week, he fell slightly to 83.3% support, still a dominant performance, but perhaps an indication that momentum has shifted in his opponent's favor, at least a little bit. All 3 of his remaining opponents received 5.9% support in the first poll, but their numbers diverged from there. Secretary General Zane Howard has slowly increased his support each week since, climbing to 6.3% in week 2, 7.1% in week 3, and reaching 8.3% this week. Will St. Clair lost his 5.9% support in week 2, but not only regained, but improved his numbers to 7.1% in week 3 and rose again to 8.3% this week. Last week, we had a dead tie for the presidential race, with Tristan Fields and first-year outreach coordinator Ollie McQueen each receiving 50% of the vote, while the other candidate, Alex Ward, received 0%. If the motto of the Fields campaign was slow and steady wins the race, that strategy certainly seems to be working for him as he has continued his trend of small yet significant increases each week. Polling at 35.3% support week 1, he rose to 37.5% in week 2, 50% in week 3, and this week he's reached a supermajority of 66.7% support. First-year outreach coordinator McQueen had a slow start, polling at just 5.9% support in week 1, doubling it to 12.5% in week 2, and last week we witnessed her meteoric rise to 50% support. She has fallen some from her peak last week to 25%, leaving her in second place. Ward entered the race late, first receiving support in week 2 with 6.3%. He lost that support in week 3, but has more than regained it this week, reaching 8.3% support. Only 2 amendments will be voted on in the election tonight, as Ryan Hahn's vice presidential clarification amendment will not be voted on until the final meeting on May 1st. If you'd like an explanation of the amendments, along with my 2 cents about why I think they're a good idea, check out episode 2. As a reminder, amendments must receive the support of at least 66.7% of voters to be ratified and added to the Constitution. Amendment 1, the VP travel fee amendment, has risen from 35.7% support last week to 58.3% this week. The opposed camp has shrank from 21.4% to 16.7%, and last week 42.9% of voters were undecided, while only 25% remain so this week. Amendment 2, the junior CD amendment, has also risen in support from 64.3% last week to 75% this week, and the other 25% are undecided, down from 35.7% last week. Moving on to the demographic information, we can get a more detailed breakdown of the candidate's support. As a reminder, these questions were all optional, so don't be surprised if some of the numbers don't add up. For example, there is at least one instance of a candidate receiving support from someone who provided no information about themselves beyond their voting preferences, so their class rank, voting history, etc. is unknown and therefore not recorded. Additionally, since Lynn and Turner dropped out after some voters had completed the poll, any support they received is not mentioned as they are no longer running. All but one voter this week indicated that they were up to date on their dues. The one non-dues paying member indicated that they plan to vote for Fields for president, Howard for vice president, Sinclair for membership chair, and Murphy for comms director. For communications director, Scow has the support of 81.8% of dues payers, while Murphy has the remaining 18.2%. For membership chair, 54.5% of dues payers support Sinclair and 9% are undecided. 90.1% of dues payers plan to vote for Barnett for vice president, while 9% plan to vote for St. Clair. And in the presidential race, 63.6% of dues payers back Fields, 27.2% support McQueen, and 9% support Ward. Moving to academic class, we'll look at first years first. Unsurprisingly, Murphy, a first-year member of the club, has the support of 66.7% of first years, while Scow has 33.3%. Sinclair, also a first year, has the support of 66.7% of first years, and yet another 66.7% support Barnett for vice president, while 33.3% support Howard. The first years are evenly split between McQueen, Fields, and Ward for president, each receiving 33.3% of the vote. The sophomores support Scow for communications director over Murphy by a 75 to 25 margin, and 50% support Sinclair for membership chair. The sophomores are backing both of their favorite son candidates, with 100% supporting Barnett for vice president and 75% supporting Fields for president, while the other 25% back McQueen. The juniors are backing their favorite daughter Scow unanimously for communications director, while half support Sinclair for membership chair and the other half are undecided. Half of them again support their favorite son, Will St. Clair, for vice president, while the other half back Barnett. They are unified behind Fields for president. The seniors also unanimously back Scow for communications director, and their vote for membership chair is 66.7% in favor of Sinclair. They also unanimously back Barnett for vice president and are split 66.7% to 33.3% in the presidential race, with Fields leading over McQueen. In the communications director race, Scow has the unanimous support of everyone in the club for more than 2 semesters, while Murphy leads by a 60-40 margin among those in the club for 2 semesters or less. In the membership chair race, Sinclair's support is strongest at the extremes, winning 80% of the 2 semester or less vote and 100% of the 7 to 8 semester vote. She also received 50% of the 3 to 4 semester vote. Barnett is unanimously favored by everyone in the club longer than the 2 semesters, as well as 60% of the 1 to 2 semester demographic, while his opponents each received 20% among that group. The general trend in the presidential race is that the longer spent in the club, the more likely to back Fields, though there are first-year Fields voters and fourth-year McQueen voters. Fields has 60% support of 1 to 2 semester munners, 50% of 3 to 4 semester munners and 7 to 8 semester munners, as well as 100% of 5 to 6 semester munners. McQueen has 20% support of 1 to 2 semester munners and 50% among 3 to 4 and 7 to 8 semester munners. Ward's support came entirely from the 1 to 2 semester demographic, where he received 20% support. This week, all our respondents indicated that they had voted in one of the elections last semester, except for one voter who has never voted before. That first-time voter plans to vote for Fields, Howard, Sinclair, and Murphy. Those who last voted in the first-year outreach coordinator election support Scow over Murphy by an 80-20 margin. 60% support Sinclair for membership chair, They support Barnett over St. Clair by an 80-20 margin and are split 40-40-20 between Fields, McQueen, and Ward, respectively. Those who haven't voted since the Comms Director special election last semester have identical support for the Communications Director and Membership Chair race, while they unanimously back Barnett for Vice President. And in the presidential race, they back Fields over McQueen by an 80-20 margin. In the last Communications Director general election, there were two candidates, Chloe Randolph, the winner, and Sanaya Thomas. Everyone who voted in that last election, regardless of whether they voted for Randolph or Thomas, indicated that they plan to vote for Scow. In the last membership chair election, there were also two candidates, Nathaniel Barnett, the winner, and Tristan Fields. Sinclair received 66.7% of the support of Fields' 24 voters and 33.3% of Barnett 24 voters. Additionally, Fields and Barnett both maintained the support of their voter bases in the last election, as Fields' 24 voters unanimously plan to vote for him for president, and Barnett 24 voters unanimously plan to vote him for vice president. This time last year, we had three candidates for vice president, Caleb Lance, the winner, Ryan Hahn, and Zane Howard. No Howard 24 voters filled out the poll this week, and only one Hahn 24 voter did, who indicated that they plan to vote for Barnett this year. Barnett also has the unanimous support of Lance 24 voters. Last but most certainly not least, our last presidential election also had three candidates, Ahmad Bahar, the winner, Jonah Dittus, and Eli Habersetzer. One Dittus 24 voter and one Habersetzer 24 voter filled out this week's poll, and they plan to vote for Fields and McQueen, respectively. Among Bahar 24 voters, 75% back Fields, while 25% back McQueen. Though we are now done with collecting data, these polls are still entirely dependent on the honor system, and it's very likely that one or more of these polls will be very inaccurate to what ends up happening later tonight. To the candidates who got good news from this poll, congratulations, but I would advise you not to count your chickens before they hatch. Many voters do not decide who they plan to vote for until election night, so you will still need to do well in the speech and Q&A portions to win. And to those of you who are worried, I would give you the same advice. I've seen several underdog candidates end up winning because the frontrunner gave a bad speech and did poorly in the Q&A. And besides, since we use ranked choice voting, you don't have to be the most popular candidate to win. You just have to be the least unpopular. You may only get 2 or 3 first choice votes, but still up as the winner. Though I do recognize that this last piece of advice is unhelpful if there are less than 3 candidates in your race. In the description of this video, you'll find a link to a playlist. This playlist contains the first 4 episodes of MUNPR, as well as the 2 special episodes. I would highly encourage you to listen to episode 5, as it contains the interviews of all the candidates still running, including Ethan Lindsay. It is quite long, but I'll put timestamps in the description of that video so you can jump to a specific interview if you want. There is also an episode 6, which is not at all informational and is exclusively editorial. In that episode, I share my thoughts on how I plan to vote as of today, though I am certainly still open to my vote being swung based on speeches and Q&A. If you happen to be interested in what a senile old coot has to say, then check out episode 6. But again, there is no polling data there, only my opinions. Make sure to pay your dues by tonight and either come to the meeting or text your voting preferences to Ethan Lindsay in order to have your vote counted. Thank you so much for tuning into the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I've been your host and Vice President, Caleb Lance, signing off for the last time.